Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. Today we'll be talking about half-elves. Which half do we talk about first?
How about we talk about the whole?
The whole elves, or the whole of Nerdarchy first. I'm Ryan.
I'm Ted.
Dave.
Nate.
So half-elves, pretty sweet. They made them not suck.
Yeah, it's nice they don't stick in this edition.
I for the life of me, I can't recall a half-elf I've played in previous editions. The setup on this one is pretty perfect. I'm definitely feeling the itch to try it out.
They were super lame in 3.5, weren't they?
I think so.
They're really, really vanilla.
And I remember in second just using it to play multi-class fighter mages, so that's why I picked it. So it wasn't anything dealing with the actual race abilities that I got.
But in fifth they shine.
Yeah,
They
that's
do some
true.
pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
They're skill monkeys. They get more languages than anybody else.
Well, they're half humans, so
They get more points than anybody but the human without the variant.
Although they don't get the feat.
Don't
So
get
that's
the
our
feat.
choice.
You get a +2 to charisma and a +1 to 2 different stats
Of your choice.
of your choice. So that makes it incredibly versatile.
Yeah, that means the half-elf can really be good at anything.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really good at your charisma-based characters like the
Yeah.
sorcerer,
Warlock.
paladins.
bard, paladin, but you can play anything with the
You
half
could
elf.
be
It's
decent.
wide open.
Well, with the one thing I was saying before is like you could dump charisma and still not have a crap charisma as far as like your saves and stuff like
Right.
that go.
Yeah, your crappy score is a 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then everything else is onwards and upwards from there. So,
Right.
Yeah.
I love the fact that they get the bonus proficiencies. That's a big deal in this edition.
And that's anything. Two proficiencies in anything you want. Now, granted, you might look at it as like, oh well, it's a whopping +2 in the beginning to 2 skills. But if you look at you can always make checks on anything. Having that proficiency bonus late game when it's a +6, that's pretty freaking huge.
Well, even the +2 is a big deal in this edition. Every +1 counts. I mean, when a 16 is like the equivalent of having an 18 or a 20 of previous editions.
Right.
An extra +2 is a big deal.
Right.
And the fact that all the DCs are lower, that you're gonna get more mileage out of that +2. For playing a lot of different games online, when you see someone come in with a 20 stat because they quote unquote rolled their stats, that +5 compared to everyone else's best score of +3 is a huge difference. You add proficiency on top of that. I mean, they're like gods and stuff.
Right.
+7. Yeah.
Imagine if they're a rogue with expertise.
Right.
Oh jeez.
Then it really gets out of control in this edition because when you have a +10 to do something, you are a god.
Right.
You're pretty much going to do it.
The hardest thing to do is a 30, I think. In
Yeah.
this edition. It's
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
30.
Yeah, Odin forbid if you get like a magic item that gives you a plus something to do the thing on top of having like a 20 stat and proficiency in it, and then maybe another +2 from a magic item. I haven't seen
Because
any
what is
items
that?
that
Let's
do
see.
so.
A 20 stat is 5.
Yeah.
Proficiency.
Starts off at a 2, maxes out at 6.
Yeah, so 2 would bring it to a 7. But like, say you're a rogue and have expertise, that's a 9 at first level you could do.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think the +2 is a huge.
Now, with this
deal.
expertise, can you take these 2 skills that the half elf gets and attach them to something that you already have from either your class or?
No,
okay,
they're separate
that's-
skills.
yeah.
Expertise is actually an ability that the rogue gets. I think the bard gets it at some point too.
The knowledge cleric gets it as well.
Yeah,
Where
certain
you can
certain
double,
things
double
get it.
stack your proficiency.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
But
And double your proficiency
yeah,
bonus
double
for 2
your
skills.
proficiency bonus.
2 skills, or well, actually, the rogue can also use tools too, because I think thieves' tools is the specific tools that they get to do that with for expertise.
But when you double that, like all right, it starts off at a 2, but when that bumps to a 3, that's being bumped to a 6. So you stack that on top of that 20.
Yeah. So back to half elf.
Uh,
So that
What were
pretty
we
much
talking
all
about?
that
Yeah.
skill stuff. Pretty much takes care of the human aspect and their ability to take 2 +1s and put them wherever they want to,
Right.
other than charisma.
Yeah, they're very
Yeah,
versatile.
very versatile. So now the elf part of that is what they get. They get what?
They get the dark vision.
Dark vision. What?
Oh,
10
don't
feet,
even-
20 feet.
No, they get the dark vision
Full on.
exactly the
Full-
same.
This is one of
as
my
the elf.
pet-
They get full blown.
This is one of
dark
my
vision.
pet peeves with 5th edition is dark vision. It's I feel like the half elves should have gotten a lesser dark vision. You know, just like I feel like why the hell doesn't a Dragonborn not have dark vision? Like these things baffle my
They
mind.
keep you up at night.
They do.
Yeah.
I can't sleep.
So they have the same dark vision as elves. I think that was kind of like to just eliminate complications of, well, I can
Dark
only see
vision.
light in-
There's either dark vision or non-dark.
yeah,
vision.
you can either see in the dark or you can't.
Except for Drow,
Except
apparently,
for Drow,
superior
because they're-
because everybody loves Drow.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me back to my pet peeve. Why can you double it for the Drow but not half it for the half elf? It
Half
doesn't make
elf,
any sense.
Half the vision.
That's it.
So they did half the with it for Fey ancestry. They have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put them to sleep. Now, is that exactly the same as the elf, or
I
I
don't
think
know.
I think it might
I
be.
think it is.
yeah?
Might be.
So again, they're getting the full amount on it, but they didn't. They just did not half the vision.
Did not have to.
Everybody can see 60 or nothing,
Unless you're Drow.
Unless you're a
better,
Drow.
because then you're
unless you're the favored race,
yeah, and then you're just better than everyone else.
The master race.
the
of
master
Drow.
race.
It's written exactly the same.
Yeah.
If there wasn't clerics with sunlight spells and a sun orbiting the world, Drow would take over the world.
That's right.
I don't know. Is there still a sunlight spell?
It was light.
There's a spell.
Yeah,
that
but
mimics-
light doesn't hurt them.
There's some kind of radiance. I mean, no, maybe not.
Maybe. I don't know.
There's got to be some kind of sunburst.
That's
spell.
for another time.
Yeah.
Half-elves.
How do you kill vampires? There's got to be a sunburst spell. Well,
Well, I mean,
what
the
do
cool
you think
thing
about
about
ours?
half elves is it lets you do a lot of sort of interesting flavor things without actually being it. Like, you could make a half elf that's half Drow, and like, there's no game mechanical things other
Right.
than your baseline half
And then I
elf.
can explain why you can see it just as good as the
Yeah.
regular.
Right, yeah,
ones.
clearly. But for
'Cause you're half a Drow elf.
but for another thing, you could be half aquatic elf, and like it's just my skin's kind of green tinged, and maybe there's like the vestiges.
And maybe
of,
you have the sailor background.
well, yeah, and maybe there's vestiges of gills, but like not really. Like you got some weird thing going on your neck. But like again, it's
That's
just
a
like
glider.
it's just an interesting story sort of thing, as opposed to just being your run of the mill half elf. So I don't know. You can do cool stuff with that.
Mhm.
You can play around with any combination of various human races, and
Well, it's funny too
And
because like it also like in the fluff of this stuff, it's like an elf and a half elf make an elf, a half elf and a human make a human, a half elf and a half elf make a half elf. So it's almost like I guess like it's in some ways it's like a true race.
Mm.
Now I don't know if they did the full on.
I don't think they did, because I think 4E did that thing. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's dumb.
Yeah, I think they did it with half orcs and half elves because they didn't want rape babies running around everywhere.
So what happens if a half elf and a half orc make a baby?
It explodes.
It becomes a quarter of an abomination. Yeah.
Yeah, 3/4 human, 1/4 abomination.
Are you green skinned with pointy ears?
Isn't that no? Wouldn't that still technically only be? Wouldn't that be still be half human and a quarter elf and a quarter orc?
Yeah, I don't know what the breakdown is.
I think you'd still get funding from the government, but yeah, nothing really shows up.
Oh. Oh, my word. Yeah.
I'm thinking grants and
Yeah.
I don't know.
Foundation. There's a foundation.
What, I
This
mean,
is
I don't
going
mean
way off
handouts.
track.
Oh, man. Poor half orc, half
Half
elf.
elf.
I mean, like, I guess as a PC, you just say that I'm a half elf, or I'm a half orc, or I'm just a human. I just look kind of effed up.
I'm just a really funny looking
human. I got some
Well, you
weird stuff.
did
going.
that. You made a guy who was human who had orc as features.
Yeah, he was like an eighth of. He was like a 16th of orc on his mother's side, twice removed or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's all fluff and flavor stuff that you can do. This half elf though, I think I did make a half elf. I made a half elf. My warlock that I made is a half elf, with the criminal background. And
He's your spell sniper, right?
he's my spell sniper.
I thought you were gonna make him Tiefling. Now you ended up going different.
No, I went half elf because they're cooler.
Half elf scout.
Well, the +2, the charisma versus the +2, the intelligence.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with
I
it.
was totally whoring that one over.
Well,
Yeah.
and the dark vision's pretty important too. I mean, without having to carry a torch around and this and that.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful.
That doesn't make a good sniper.
The Tieflings get dark
Tieflings, yeah, I'm sure a Tiefling's gonna get dark vision. That'd be silly if they didn't.
Dragonborn.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the dark visionless dragonborn.
Yeah, really.
They're the stuff. Nah, I really do think the only ones that don't get it are human, halfling, and dragonborn.
Dragonborn. The most innately magical race cannot see in the dark.
Based on creatures that I'm pretty sure can see in the dark.
Yeah.
I think at some point in time, Dave's going to pull out the chainsaw. He's going to tear through the rules and say, okay, Dragonborn have dark vision, half-elves have 30 feet. That's the end of it. You know?
When we
In
get
my homebrew.
when we get to sort of laying down the house rule hammer.
Yeah. It may just happen, and while it may just make checks for everything.
Yeah. Just because you want to see.
Oh, you want to go to the bathroom, to the privy, do you? Drop a wild search
search.
Well,
check.
due to your magical nature.
That's magical picture we got there.
Make
You
a lot,
used your
yeah.
breath weapon. That's magic.
Maybe you urinate daisies. Let's just see how
Let's
it
see
does.
how this
Let's have a
goes.
roll.
Oh, it's a fireball.
That's gonna burn.
You're so wishing you had gonorrhea right now.
All right.
And that's the wrap up for Half Elf. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Wait. Is there anything else? So yeah, they're awesome for a bunch of different classes.
They're not so much a dislike, half breed race anymore. They've got their own. They're
The
like
rules-
as diplomats. They're
the-
kind of like a foot in each race's path. In a sense.
Although I kind of feel like, mechanically they're way more interesting than a lot of the other races. Fluff wise, like they fall short for me. Like when we did gnomes,
Yeah.
I think the gnomes are the opposite. Like they fall short on the mechanical
Mechanically,
stuff,
yeah.
but the fluff stuff is awesome.
Well, I mean, but there hasn't been like a lot of half-elf canon characters of note to like really draw upon or whatever. Whereas like there's been some really fun gnome characters written into like the literature.
I think that's part of.
Like Tannis half-elven is not the most beloved of characters, which is.
But I don't know. But you said gnome. Who's a gnome? I don't remember reading about any.
There's
gnomes.
really memorable gnome
There's
characters.
really
I can think of
memorable
one.
scenes. There's really memorable scenes with gnomes in them.
I can only think of one.
Well, who springs to mind when you think gnome?
The deep gnome Snurfnevlin Belwar.
Right.
And that he was memorable because
he's
because Drizzt got his hands cut off.
Right.
Sideline character though, really. I mean, not really. Like,
I
mean, if you talk
again, that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
There aren't any main ones either. Don't get any love.
yeah,
Not like dwarves, halflings, elves.
they're not as sexy. Yeah.
Humans, yeah.
And I look at the fact that in previous editions they didn't have the love that they're being showed here. That they're really being pushed into the spotlight to say, look, let's make them balanced and desirable, as opposed to the let's just have someone pick it because they want to be somewhere in that middle. They want to be that rejected guy. The book shows that they're established race. This is what goes on. This is how they are. So I think that
I might have thought of a half-elf character.
you already have one.
Was Sadira? Wasn't she half-elven?
I thought she was human from Dark Sun. I thought she
Yeah.
was human. Maybe.
I thought she was half-elven. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think she was 1/4 abomination.
Nerdarchy! To Google! To the Google mobile!
Yes.
Well,
We're going to figure this out.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
be
have to
right
check
back.
that one.
Not
No.
really.
You know what's funny in the player's handbook? They specifically mention sort of the half-elf thriving as like a wildernessy sort of character, like being a hermit and going into the woods.
Yeah.
Like that's the least optimal build for them, really. It's like being a ranger or druid is not really the best.
Being
thing.
away from people to influence.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna be alone, even though I'm really good with people. I'm gonna be alone and go away from them. Yeah.
People like me. By gosh golly.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny. So like they'd also make decent clerics with like your host of charisma based skills that you would.
Anything that you're going to use the charisma skills for, they're going to work. You mean you could certainly play a half-elven rogue, it would certainly do well for any of the deception and
Skill monkeys.
skill monkeys. But then, as you said, could absolutely say, well, I want to play half-elven for the other things they get, and I don't care about charisma. So you wind up getting that. Well, my 8 becomes a 10, and my crap stat's not really all that crappy.
Right.
And you move on from there. So
Well-
they really have the biggest swing.
Even the fighter. Like, even you went, okay, I want to play a fighter. Well, it never hurts to be immune to sleep and resistant to charm.
Absolutely.
And, a seeing in the dark is always useful. Well, if you're a strength fighter, you have a +1 to strength. If you're a dex fighter, you have a
+1
+1
to dex.
Or both.
Yeah, or both. Or, I'd probably say one goes in the con.
Yeah.
But, so they can have the good stats. You can dump charisma and it won't really, adversely affect you. It's a class that doesn't get a lot of skills.
And buy a bunch of your and buy a bunch of your stats at odd numbers, or plan your feat tree in advance.
Yeah.
But
adding 2 proficiencies to a lot of classes is super useful, especially if you're one that only gets 2, and then you get 2 from your background. So now you're up to 6. As one of those classes that aren't skill based. And that's the extra language is nothing to sneeze at. Common, Elven, and one of your choice. So there's a ton of stuff going on.
I really think there isn't a class that the half elf doesn't do well
So
in.
mechanically, they've given us a crap ton of reasons to play a half elf like they did.
they're very versatile.
Like they did with the human, right? So these are the 2 classes I think people like to play the least.
Races.
Yeah, those 2. Yeah,
I played elf back when it was a class.
Yeah. Back when I started, elf was a class. No, I think for the races, in my opinion, half elf and human have always been like my least likely to play.
Right.
With 3rd edition, they started giving me reasons to play a human.
Mm-hmm.
The horror and power gamer in me, felt the pull on the call.
Twitch.
Yeah, well, with 3rd edition, feats really were very interesting, especially when we first got started.
Absolutely.
With 5th edition, though, mechanically, both of those classes have a lot of flavor to them.
Races.
But maybe, but fluff-wise, they're still kind of boring. Like, when I look at all the other races, they're far more interesting. So they did a good job on that half of it. So, but here's the thing, like, now, on the fluff end, that's up to, in my opinion, up to us as gamers and DMs and players to come up with how to make those characters interesting. So there, of course, we've all played with those players that they don't actually ever care to make their characters interesting. It's only about the stats and the mechanics. Where I think in our group we do get a lot of players that power game the mechanics, but then when we build the story around that and try and make it interesting. When you talk, when I hang out in a lot of these online communities, there's a lot of player archetypes that are, in my opinion, way different than our group, where like you have the thespians and they only care about the story and the immersiveness and blah blah blah. And after a few seconds, my eyes glaze over, and they're like Nazis. They're like militant Nazis. They're horrible with this stuff.
Did you just say that out of character?
Yeah. And then you have the other spectrum, the power gamer, that really all they care about is getting the most out of min-maxing the numbers. Where our group has always fallen in the middle. We enjoy this story. We immerse ourselves in the story. We like to build effective characters that are fun to play. And so, I don't know where I was going with that. It's up to us.
We're awesome.
Yeah, no. It's up to us as the players and the DMs to make the characters interesting.
Yeah,
and make the
half-elf
mechanics coincide with the story.
So you've got a half elf, and you feel that the actual fluff is light, so therefore you have to create the fluff.
You have to create the fluff.
Do the extra work and say, okay, well, if
Fluff
if you're the DM, what are half elves in your world? Are they an emerging culture? Are they something new? Is it taboo for a half elf to exist?
Maybe there's a diplomat guild
You
or
know,
something of that nature, where it's like hire, the negotiator kind of thing, where you hire, then it's a group of half elves that all create a community together, like an adventuring troop. But
are relations between your elves and humans less than cordial, and somehow they it's kind of like the orc thing. Where do half orcs come from? You don't want to know, kid. So it could be that the thing. It could be like
well,
rape babies.
that was Tanis Half-Elven's backstory.
Really, yeah.
He was a product of a human brigand taking advantage of an elven maiden, and that was also one of the reasons why he was kind of ostracized. One, because he was a half breed, and two, because of how he came to be. So So that there is the half orc thing that does happen as well. But but then again, what about something more interesting like arranged marriages?
Right.
Yeah, and really, the elves can really just use one person over and over again.
You're part of our outreach program. I know it's your 600th year, but you're almost done.
It's time again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every 60 years, it's time to trade.
Yeah.
Or
Well, no,
That's
that
a
could
lot
be
of
that
alliances
could be,
with
that,
human lands
that
over
could be
600
like
years.
a cast of an elven culture where like.
Oh yeah, like almost like the guy, like a geisha or something.
Right.
So, which I'm probably completely using that wrong, but whatever. Yeah. So
Well, it'd be like a cultural envoy plus. plus
companion.
Companion. Sure, there's a good euphemism for it.
Well, no, I was speaking strictly of
Firefly.
Firefly.
Yeah, but the whole pregnancy thing usually isn't a part of the deal.
No, it's usually not. But companion was a cast.
Yeah.
Right.
And a job at the same time.
Mm.
Much different than being a whore.
Totally different.
Completely different. But half elves. So I don't know. You guys got anything else to add?
I do agree that the fluff is on the side of the DM and the PCs.
Well, yeah, especially because it's kind of weak in here.
Yeah.
I was not impressed as far as the other races go. I love the mechanics.
But like half elf, you can go any which way you want with it. So it's kind of whatever you want. You want to have a roving team of diplomats. You want to have a culture where there's actually a group of half elves somewhere.
And I don't know.
Whatever.
Honestly, in their defense, I don't know how to do it generically and still be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's
Specific and generic.
I
all
really
once.
feel that I think they left it open so that if you're like us playing in a homebrew, that it's not molded to say, oh well, this doesn't fit how you're playing, so you're beat. It's just put out there, say, okay, this is what they are. They're between this and this, and go. So you can leave it in that spectrum of okay, they're accepted, they're not accepted, they're somewhere in the middle, they're affluent or they're not. So it's wide open for interpretation, and it's up to us as the GMs to flavor our world in the proper way with what half-elves really are. We haven't really established that in Gryffindor. We have an elven community and a human settlement right here, but we haven't delved deeply into that relationship to say, is there a lot of back and forth? Gryffindor has only been around for 60 years, so has it been long enough for half-elves to really be truly common? So it's...
They are listed in the uncommon races of the book. So.
Well, that's the other thing that we might want to bring up briefly because we're talking about this is the fact the book does separate. And we mentioned this in the gnomes, is the book separates common and uncommon races. Obviously, half elf, because it requires a human and an elf, makes it fall into the uncommon category. Same thing with the half orc, and then you have the lesser known gnomes and
the gnome's a little weird to me. Just saying it's a little weird that the gnome got relegated to the uncommon section.
They're
it's
like
always,
Smurfs, dude.
but it's always been part of
they're
like
Smurfs. You
they're hard
never
to
see a
find.
Smurf.
it's always been like part of the canon. Like
Yeah.
gnome has been in every edition of D&D until.
But it
fourth.
wasn't a player race in fourth.
That's what I'm saying. Up until fourth, it was always part of the core. And then like now it's part of the core, but it's funny that they're shunted into like the little ghetto.
Well, they gotta work their way back up to the power chain.
Yeah, 6th edition, dude. They'll be right in there again. Strong.
regular common race.
Yeah, or
Dwarf's tinier cousin.
they'll become monsters of legend. And they'll have layers with layer effects. So
And sweet treasure.
and sweet treasure.
Nice.
So
Yay or nay, half elves.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Warlock, sorcerer,
Bard.
I really feel that they could do any class and do it well.
Yeah.
Any class.
Are half elves good enough to convince Ted not to play a human for the feat? That is the real question. Yes.
That's the question I asked myself actually.
I'm part of me says, well, okay, well, is it worth me giving up the feat to get the extra proficiency in language for my cleric in your game? I mean, it's honestly like, is this a...
Are you thinking about multi-racing in the half elf?
Yes. Is it a multi-race? Yes.
I just discovered something in my ancestry.
I'm just gonna pick up some extra DNA over here.
I went to
Ancestry.com.
ancestry.com. Yeah.
It seems that I have more than just a quarter elf.
quarter elf on the
Headed
other
towards the
brother's
half.
side. Yeah.
So I definitely dig it.
Yeah, it's good. It's just that, like, yeah, I probably would preserve it for the charisma-based castery.
That's true, but like if you look at Ted's character, another 2 proficient. How many do you got proficiencies do you have now?
7,
You have 7. How many languages?
6.
So you'd be at 7 and 9.
Well, I would lose some because I get the proficiency from human.
Oh, right.
So I would pick up an extra 1 and an extra language.
So you're at what do you?
So
But
I
you
would
lose the cantrip and the magic.
I would lose the two cantrips and the
yeah,
first
we're just
level
talking
spell.
skills right now.
But so I would pick up an extra skill and an extra language. So I have 8 proficiencies and 7 languages
Wow.
as a first level.
Are there 8
character.
proficiencies in this book?
Yeah, there are. I mean, he'd be hard pressed to find things that fit that particular character.
Why is your sage an acrobat? Well, he was studying at this circus and
He decided it wasn't for him.
Came across some gobelos.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we've depleted half elf for now. Like I said,
And then went on some tributaries as well.
yeah.
Just a handful.
There's not. Let's face it. The half elf. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Yet they're still fairly cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love the mechanics. I love the feel. I think there's a lot of room to develop that race.
So if
in
you
a
honestly,
homebrew world.
so if you're honestly looking to go a skill monkey, do a half elf, sage, cleric with the knowledge domain. You're just crazy.
8 skills.
So there you
It's
go.
disgusting. So with that, you can always like, comment, share, subscribe, and there's some places they can find us as well.
Check us out on nerdarchy.com.
Or we have a subreddit as
Yeah.
Nerdarchy, and Twitter. Well, with that, until next time,
Stay nerdy.